Hello, everybody. I am Miki, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been through these steps with the help of a Big Book Step Study sponsor, a supportive universe, and many meetings like these. I still have amends to make, and I try to practice all steps to the best of my ability and willingness on a daily basis. I was very nervous about coming here because I heard this was a big meeting, so bear with me. And I just finished this process in February, so this is still new to me, but it is a wonderful process. I got sober, just to qualify a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about my story. I got sober at AdCare in Worcester, actually, in the fall of 2013, and that has been my last detox by the grace of God. And I had been out there for about 40 years, and on and off. And that last time, I came to realize that all the self-will and all the tries that came before were to no avail, and that I just couldn't do this. I just couldn't do it on my own. I realized that a couple of things. First of all, the alcoholism, and when I say alcoholism, I don't mean just alcohol, because I've gone through many substances on and off. And I jumped from one substance to the next. I had a malady of the mind. My mind was sick. That's the first thing I learned. And the second one was that the disease I had was a disease of disconnection. And I'll explain a little bit about that. You know, it started in my early teens, where I felt that I was disconnected. There was a lack of connection, and I didn't feel at ease. I didn't feel at ease with who I was, and I didn't feel at ease with other people. There was an issue of a low self-esteem, and I didn't like who I was for some reason. And that dis-ease with who I was, you know, it only took one romantic disappointment to start this ball rolling. And so I had followed a boy to another country, and we were very young, and when he told me to go home, you know, my world kind of crumbled, and I went straight into heroin, you know, without even like thinking of the consequences. And there I thought I found the solution. To me, that was the solution, because that took all my pain away, you know. I completely fell in love with it. But since I was running on self-will, I tried to stop several times, you know. And so, you know, I began this story of being completely involved in something and then trying to come out of it on my own, you know? And I kept falling. And so I came to this country with 500 pills of methadone. I mean, some crazy thing. And I tried to put an ocean in between myself and that. And I came here. And it worked for a little while. You know, I went to school, and then I got married, and then I had a child. And then, of course, you know, life happens, because my malady was still there. My mind was still sick, and, you know, my heart was not okay. And of course, you know, you go through a divorce. I went through a divorce. And then I discovered the substance called crack, and, you know, and alcohol at the same time. And so that became my new solution. And when I was smoking crack, I had episodes that were so intense and so crazy. You know, I almost lost my life a couple of times. I had 2 young children in the house, and the situation was just so insane, and I was a very, very sick person. I had a boyfriend that he and I would go and break into people's homes to steal their electronics and their computers and their jewelry, you know, and then we would sell them to the dealers. And these are things I did in my home with my kids in the house. So what I'm trying to say is that the disease was still there, and it started to kind of, it started to get worse. But of course, you know, I tried to get sober all the time on my own, and I did, you know, and I fell into it again for another little while. It talks in here about these sprees, you know, these crazy sprees that we have. I would have these very intense sprees, and then I would try to pull myself together and come out. And so when alcohol became an issue, you know, I felt like I had a control over it. Like I wouldn't drink in the morning, I would only drink at night. And I would only drink wine, I wouldn't drink hard liquor. And so I justified my drinking, you know, until I started having blackouts. And those blackouts got worse and worse. And so I eventually pulled out of the alcohol, and I started taking painkillers. And while I was on painkillers, I also been on benzos for 30 years, and so the combination became very lethal. In 2009, though, you know, my self-preservation kind of kicked in, and I started doing yoga on a very consistent basis. But again, the malady is still there. So I could take care of my body, but my mind and my emotion, everything was still sick, because I was still not at peace, and I still hadn't dealt with anything in my life. And so by 2013, when my kids were grown and I was on my own and I was alone, and my finances started to crumble, and I lost a home, and I was alone, and I overdosed, and I realized this is the end of the road, you know. I could not do this anymore. So I went to Ad Care because I wanted to live. And they kept me for 8 days and detoxed me from the benzos, and they put me on methadone, but that was like a 3-day thing. And I really suffered, I must say. I really, really suffered physically, but I got out of there barely walking, but somehow there was a little glimmer of hope, a tiny little glimmer of hope in my life finally. And I then did an intensive outpatient treatment, and at the same time I did a yoga teacher training, and that is really what had made me understand a couple of things. The first precept of yoga is do no harm. And I was doing a lot of harm, not only to myself, but to everybody that I touched, you know. And so do no harm. I realized, okay, I am no longer going to do harm, not to myself and not to others. And number 2 and 3 are, you know, non-lying, non-stealing, and there is moderation, and there is non-hoarding, and then, but this is beside the point. But I stayed sober, and I completed my teacher training. And I stayed, you know, it took me another 2.5 years to get into these halls. And the reason why I got into these halls are 2. My son had been out there for 12 years, and he got sober before me, and he was in open AA, and you know, he has 4+ years now. And so he came back and started living with me right when he had almost a year sober. And so he was my example. So I saw the change in him, and it was amazing. This was a guy that, drank and took every drug possible, available, and that's all his life was. And here he was, becoming a young man of the world. And it was shining, and I saw it. And the other was really the wreckage of my past. I needed to talk about it. I needed to write it. I needed to deal with it, And so actually it was my son, I asked him about this woman that he knew that was in AA. And one day he came home and he gave me her phone number. And I called her, and so we started this process. And I had no idea what Big Book Step Study was. I had been to a few meetings in AA, that's it. So I started, she said, you have to go to 2 Big Book Step Studies meetings a week. And we started reading. And she told me you underline the words you don't understand, and you highlight the parts that relate to you. And so I was willing to do just about anything. I wanted to live in a way that I knew was available to certain people, but I just had never found and I've never known before. And so I did everything she told me to. And when we got to step 3, it was kind of funny because I was not a believer. I never said the word God. I had such a big spiritual hole. And so when she held my hand and she said, are you willing to turn your life over to God? And are you willing to help other alcoholics once you're done with this process? And I'm like, me? I'm like, me? Who am I going to help? I don't know anything. And she looked at me and she said, just say yes. I'm like, okay, yes. And then she said, get this 5 subject notebook and a pencil, or many pencils. And we're going to start writing. And, the first thing is the resentments. And the resentments, I thought I had a lot. I had about 150 resentments because I heard a person once speak and she had 9,000. So she said, you feel this much? I'm like, oh my God, I didn't have that many. So I wrote my resentments, and then you do your turnarounds, and then you start seeing your part in it. I started to see my part in all of it, in where I was wrong, but also where I was wrong about myself, where I was beating myself up with everything. And I started slowly to have this little bit of love for myself. It started very, very slowly, but I wrote furiously. I wanted to get it all out. I think it says it in here too, and when we get to step 5, I will talk about it. I didn't hold anything back. I didn't hold anything back. I didn't want to live with my secrets anymore. There were some horrible secrets that I kept. And one of them, I just shared it in a meeting last week. When I was doing crack, I left my toddler in a crib alone in the house to go down the projects and score. And those things I couldn't forgive myself for, It's just, who does those things? But anyway, I started putting them all down on paper. And when it came to the fears, which is the second part of step 4, I had a gazillion fears. And I was ruled by fears, and putting them down in writing was just amazing. It was just so liberating. And then you get to your sex inventory, which is not pretty. Because that was another thing, there were times where I really sold myself for drugs, and I can only share this in a place like this. I would not share this with anyone else, because I know you understand. And so I finished the writing. And I had this sponsor I'm actually leaving with her tomorrow. We're going on a 5-day retreat to study the yogic texts. She never judged me. She just listened, and she read everything I wrote down without judgment. And so when I finished the writing, I was like, boy, okay, now I got to read it. Now I got to read it all. And I got to read it aloud, which is not pretty either. And so I went to her house, and we did 2-hour increments. It took us about 8 to 10 hours, I think. So I sat down on her sofa. She sat over there on her sofa. She closed her eyes. Oh, first she lit a candle on her little table, and then she grabbed the chair and brought the chair up, and I said, what is that for? And she said, that's for God. So God was listening. I don't have an easy time saying the word God. I always say that my God is the universe, but I don't have any problem now calling it God. And so God listened to my entire life story. And so did she, and I was very comfortable with her because she knew me by then. She knew everything I had done. She listened quietly. She didn't make any comments. There were times where I made some comments because I was so sick of me. So sick of me. It reminded me of this joke by Garfield. I know I shouldn't joke, but where he says, enough you talking about me, now let me talk about me. And I'm like, damn. What was... But anyway, it's such a process of humility, fearlessness, and honesty. I told her my entire life story, all the things I had done. And eventually, towards the end of reading all of that, I did start to feel lighter. And I started to feel like I could look the world, like it says here, look the world in the eye. The shame was kind of dissipating. Just like it says here, we feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. I definitely started to feel that way. And after we were done with the reading, she said, you go home and you have to sit. You have to sit quietly. No phone, right? No, nothing. Sit quietly with whatever comes up with your God. Of course, you pray before you do any of that. You do say a third step prayer. And I sat, and this beautiful peace started to descend upon me, as if now I could start to live. And this is what happened. Just like it says here, we shall walk a free woman at last. Is our work solid so far? Yes, the work was solid. If you do this work, you will be a free person. Because today, I don't have all that baggage anymore, There is no sadness in my life. There might not be a lot of excitement, but there's just beauty, there's beauty, there's love, there's friendship. And when I say love, love, the big L. I've never had as many friends as I have now. I no longer feel disconnected. I am completely connected with people, with nature, with the world, with you all, with myself. I practice non-harming towards myself and others. I speak the truth. I don't steal. I don't take what is not mine. And I treat everybody with love and respect. And that's what this process has allowed me to do. And I think I'll leave it at that and then just listen to you now.